Welcome back. This is still the Polity reaching you live from the Abuja studios of Kaftan Television. I've been joined in the studio now by legal practitioner Kelechi, who is here to speak on some of the recent happenings around the nation. Welcome to the program. Good afternoon.
Thank you so much for having me again.
Welcome. I know you're just coming from the courts, perhaps not the Supreme Court. So let's start from court issues. The Supreme Court, while you're on your way, possibly, the news came out that they've adjourned the case of over the new notes of the Naira policy featuring the governors and the federal government to March 3 for judgment. So let me get your thoughts on this matter and how it's progressing so far, and the date particularly, March 3. That's after February 25th, which is just some days away, where the election will hold. What's your take on this whole issue and the updates?
Yes, parties rightly filed their processes, and all processes went in, and today was set down for hearing, of which the Supreme Court had every opportunity to determine the matter today if they had wanted to. This is not the first time they could hear a matter the same day and maybe take a recess and then deliver judgment on it. But considering the technical nature of the matter and how it is, and parties that are involved in how the nature of the matter and the number of parties that are involved, I think the work is kind of bulky, I would say. And the Supreme Court picking 3rd of March as a date for delivering their judgment. It's something, personally, I felt that we should have gotten a closer date so we get to know our fate. Not in the past couple of days, we've had opinions, counter opinions, orders and counter orders, and from all agencies of government. We've had from the Supreme Court, we've had from the presidency, we've had even from the governors. Take for instance the governor of Kaduna State. He gave his own order to that effect. So at the moment we have so many orders that are pending and lying fallow for Nigerians. So Nigerians are questioning on which to obey and which. So it's expedient we get this matter to rest and know what is what. So if the policy is to survive, let the Supreme Court get to decide as expedient as they could. Let us get to have a feel of what should be done.
Still on the issue of technicalities, there's a particular issue always raised about the CBN not being a party to the matter, and basically the explanation is that the CBN can decide to do whatever it's doing because it's not a party, and it's it can't take the order. Maybe it's from something you heard on the news. It has to be joined and thereabout. But I'd like to understand the other narrative, which is that the particular issue for which the case is brought before the Supreme Court is something which the president has powers over. Is it enough to put the president and then he gives the order, or is there a necessity for the CBN to be a part of this issue?
Now, the presidency and the CBN, in terms of monetary policy, is they are co-actors, and one cannot be taken away from the other. And while the president is the executive head of the country, he have a supervisory look on the CBN because he appoints them. But however, if we look at the CBN and the law creating them, you get to understand that the CBN on its own is an independent body with its own organ and laws that enables them. Now, they have been saddled with the day-to-day running of this kind of policies, the monetary policies, how it affects Nigeria. So now, when issues of monetary policies are discussed and are challenged, when it becomes an issue that would need interpretation, it is very pertinent that they be brought in as a party. Now, you wouldn't exclusively have a proper discussion on this issue without inviting them. Reason being that the president does not have a day-to-day running of the policies, the financial policies of this country. He barely knows a little about the day-to-day running. We don't expect, the president is not omniscient. He has arms that he has delegated duties to. And by law, by the CBN Act, the CBN has delegated these powers to the Central Bank of Nigeria, and its governor being the head. Now, you cannot override these issues by avoiding to bring in the CBN as a party. Now, in determining questions of law, parties are necessary. All parties that have any interest or whose actions affect the interests of that matter must be brought to the table of discussion. You do not exclude any party in any discussion in law. So, by bringing all parties, it is very, very, very pertinent that you bring in the CBN, let them explain their organization, let them explain their policy, let them explain how this policy have been implemented from the day go. Their day-to-day implementation of this policy. The president, if you bring in the president alone, he does not have the robust knowledge of this whole policy. Since an arm of government, an agency of the government is saddled with the day-to-day running. So in details, it is very pertinent that the CBN is brought in to the matter.
All right, that's fair enough. But I think the final question is: if the CBN is brought in, doesn't that automatically remove it from?
Of course. If the CBN is brought into this matter, automatically the original jurisdiction. There has been also questions being asked about if the original jurisdiction of the Supreme Court has been properly activated. Does this matter border on things that can activate the original jurisdiction of the Supreme Court? Now, the Constitution and additional jurisdiction of Supreme Court Act has explained the various positions upon which the original jurisdiction of the court can be activated. Now, you begin to ask this question. Monetary policies, they fall under the exclusive list of the federal government. Do the state have powers do they have a say in what happens in monetary policy? Some would argue that since it affects their people, but some would also argue, make a proposition that these matters from the day go, from the where it starts from to where it stops, the state have no say. They are just like every other Nigerians. They just have to wait for the outcome. Now, if you as a Nigerian feel uncomfortable that this thing does not favor you, you have to. The law is try that you can express your grievances. You apply to the Federal High Court and express your grievances. But on a more serious note, the CBN, as it is, there is no state CBN. There is just one CBN, and the CBN Act has saddled them with that responsibility of regulating and implementing this monetary policy. So you cannot take them out in issues that are related to monetary policy. It is under the exclusive reserve of the federal government. And whatever the action the CBN takes can and should be questioned in the court of law. And that can be taken up at the Federal High Court.
All right, that's interesting. I'd like to get more thoughts on it now on a more general note. The concessional that I'll say the president gave, which is to extend the deadline for only 200 naira notes. I'd like to get your own thoughts, personally, your experience, around the country. Do you think that has in any way alleviated or reduced the sufferings of Nigerians?
In a way, it brings in more money to the system. It brings in more money to the system. Technically, one could say the reasons for these actions is because the president might feel that having bigger notes encourages people hoarding the currency. But however, adding with the addition of the 200 naira notes, it brings more money into the system. The scarcity, it lessens the scarcity that is already been experienced by people, and I think it makes more cash available at people's disposal, so they don't get to endure in the suffering of the scarcity.
All right, let's go into now more into the political scene. We're 3 days to the election. I'd like to get your thoughts on the pulse you might be feeling, in your own locale and in Nigeria. How do you think things are shaping up? We know for the longest time, I think before the APC came on board, it was pretty much a one-horse race. Even though there's usually a second place, but that second place was often far off the CPC, perhaps the AD or ACN and so on. And then we got to a point where we now have the APC and the PDP, and became sort of a two-horse race. At this time around, there's a lot of buzz and a lot of conversation, but do you think it will trickle down into results and, generally speaking, in terms of there being more than two this time around?
The elections of the intricacies of the 2023 elections is quite interesting. It's something that has not been there before. We previously were used to just two-horse race, and people, two parties engaging themselves. But at the moment, we have active parties and active participations. We have candidates who you do not. None of the candidates is sure of anything. You might be sure of winning 1 or 2 states, but you're not sure of even getting up to 30% of the vote. At the moment, we have 18 political parties vying for various positions, and each of those candidates are qualified in their manner. And each of those candidates have their grandstands, they have their base, they have their crowds, they have things that are peculiar to them. You cannot take out one and leave one. Now, each of these 18 candidates have, in one way or the other, demonstrated that this is not business as usual. Now, if you agree with me, we no longer have just the APC and PDP. We now have the SDP. We now have the Labour Party. We now have the NNPP. And
do you think any of these persons will stand a chance?
These persons are commanding states. We've never had it where a political party other than the two prominent political parties are commanding states. You could see from the rallies being held. Look at the just concluded rally of the NNPP, where the entire it's adjudged that the entire PDP organs in Kano State collapsed into NNPP. You get to understand that it's not a one-man race as it were. It is not a two-man race as it were. If time is not taken, previously we used to have what we call the care states. The care states decides a large chunk of vote in this country. But unfortunately, this time around, that care state is going to be split. And by the time we have a split on those care states, the deciding factor boils down to people even scampering to get the requisite constitutional votes. Now, it is very difficult now to win. You might be able to pull the highest number of vote cast, but you might not be able to make the 25% in 2/3 majority of the states provided by the constitution, and that does not declare you the winner. Now, also, you might not get the the highest number of vote cast, and you might be able to gather 25% votes cast. These are two different scenarios that present for itself, and it has never happened.
I'd like you to break that down. Really, the constitution. I don't know.
Now, the constitution says you must get the highest number of vote cast.
The popular votes. Okay.
One, that is one.
All right.
The number 2 condition is that you must get 25% of votes in at least 25 in 2/3 of states, yeah. Including the FCT. That's
that's the part I wanted a little bit of clarification for.
Now, if there are
does it mean FCT is counted.
Yes, the law has stipulated that FCT is regarded. It should
so you are meant to get 25% in 25 states.
Exactly.
Okay.
Exactly. So you're going to get 25% if you come to state A. If you come to FCT, you must get 25% of vote cast in FCT.
Well, this is interesting. Though, let's assume, based on the way you've said that votes might be split. If you get 20 you have the highest votes and you only have 25% in 20 states, you have the highest second to highest. Basically,
if you won the election.
So if that happens, what then happens?
You've not won. We'll go for a rerun. You have not won. You've not won the election. Now, I also pose another scenario where you might not be able to get the highest vote cast, but you are, lucky enough to pick 25 in 2/3 of the states. It's possible. It's very, very possible. You get 25. You're not aiming for the 40. You're not aiming for the 60. You're not even aiming for the 100. You're just luckily you pick 25 in 25 states, and you're still not with the highest number of votes.
Yes.
Let's assume that someone now picks. Lagos has over 7 million votes.
Yes.
And somebody picks 6 million. One person picks 6 million. That's like a vote of 3 other states, 3 to 4 states. Now, somebody else might not get up to that 6 million, but he picks 25 in states. In states with like 500,000, you get. You might not be able to. You get the highest number of vote cast collectively, but you've been able to pick 25% in 2/3 of the states. So we might have that 2 scenarios.
But for Nigerians who don't know, what does a rerun entail? Because people hear a lot about reruns. Some persons might be thinking, does it mean the 18 parties will come back?
No.
Does it mean the ones who scored the highest? What does it mean?
No. In rerun, persons with the highest votes, the parties with the highest votes, will be put up against themselves. Now, some other parties who were not able to meet a certain number of votes will be sieved out. Now, it will now be between these persons and this person. You face each other, and you go into the rerun election. And
if the same thing happens again?
It might be unlikely, because it might be unlikely. Because at this moment, we're no longer expecting an 18 political party race. We might be having a 1, 2, or 3 political parties. So you see, it's every vote that must be cast to these 3. If there should be a rerun, 2 or 3 political parties that are standing for a rerun. But we do not pray for such, because it will also tell on the economy of Nigeria. Because you understand, it takes money and resources to organize an election. It means the INEC will not have to put up contingencies that they do not have, spend monies that we do not have in preparing for the elections. In each of those elections, you mobilize both the security personnel, the staffs, and even the materials. By the time you do this thing, it sinks and it hurts the economy of Nigeria.
All right, that's interesting. I think it will be very, peculiar to have that happen. I don't think that has ever happened in the history of Nigeria. But now, let's move on now to other matters. Recently, Vice President Professor Yemi Osinbajo said that oil theft and losses pose a serious threat to Nigeria's economy and impact negatively on the revenue of the nation. According to him, oil theft, if unchecked, would spell doom for Nigeria and could fuel public finance crisis that paralyzes the government. If you notice, possibly you would have seen some queues along the country or in the state, in the FCT already.
I agree with you.
Yeah. So, but the question now is, most of the time, the vice president tends to say these things, and people start to ask, "Aren't you the government?" Yes, you're speaking as an advisor or thereabout. What do you make of this issue? Well, and is this advice for his government or the next one?
If you critically look at the position of the vice president, the constitution does not alienate any power or create any power for the vice president. It simply puts him in a position to assist the president and to act where the president is not there.
I don't know if we had this conversation before about a VP or a governor.
Yes. Now, if you understand that situation, you understand that he's on a persuasive stand. He has no... the vice president can only be seen and not heard. His words are not law, unlike the president, except where he's acting on the mandate of the president. So you see, this from time to time he gives an advisory rule. The Constitution allows him to offer an advisory rule, but they are not binding. They are not. You cannot say these are what the law says. It's not an order. It's not an executive order. The vice president has no such powers to make such executive orders, but he can make input by advising, of which he regularly does. But the question is, will his own arm of government take up the advice and make it as a working tool? That has been a question bugging many Nigerians. But unfortunately, oftentimes we don't get to see the vice president's opinion and his contributions being taken into action. Or you cannot override such wise counsel. You cannot override such wise. Why we are here, where we are today is because such counsel has been overridden over times.
So, we will, interestingly, at the moment, people also wonder at the vice president's stance in terms of the February elections, because I think there's yet to be a categoric endorsement of any particular candidate, but that remains to be seen. But speaking about one of the things he warned about, which is it could cause some level of anarchy or spell doom for the country. Let's talk about the reactions we are seeing from people as regards this Naira swap. About 10 branches of commercial banks were destroyed during the Shagamu riot in Ogun State on Monday, the police disclosed. According to the police, it was the council secretariat and State of Ibadan electricity distribution company were touched in the attacks. It was part of the reports we saw, where the Ogun State governor, Dakpa Abiodun, said that they could be politically motivated. And a lot of people are saying that a lot of things have happened in the country that perhaps is enough for Nigerians to move funny or move in a certain way, but it doesn't happen. So what do you make of these allegations that there's an element of politics involved in this? Or do you think this could just be people's natural frustrated reactions to the situation? There is
nothing natural about the occurrence of this violence being perpetrated, and if you look at it, it's perpetrated along one line, the lines of the APC states. Now, if you agree with me that they are the chief antagonist of this Naira redesign and cash swap, and they are the chief antagonists of the deadline being set. So you cannot remove the hands of ESO in analyzing this present situation of where banks are being burned down and riots. We see people rioting on daily basis. But if I would say, I would say the banks had it coming. The banks are the highest, one of the biggest saboteurs of this policy. If they were sincere, if there was a little bit sincerity on the part of the bank from the day one, where they are to serve Nigerians who are their customers and not serve individuals. Now they would not be in the shoe that they are today. On this channel, we've seen news where security agencies walk into banks and bust them on daily basis, with banks hoarding millions of naira. They've been complicit in this whole travail. So you see, they had it coming. They by their own action, they brought it upon their doorsteps. So you see irate Nigerians, people who are angry, frustrated, and you see, this kind of condition can be activated at any slightest time. With the kind of anger in the land, a slight action can activate such anger. So whichever politics they intend to play, I don't think it is good for Nigeria and Nigerians. All parties that are involved, it is time to stop. Nigeria is for everyone, and it's annoying that these state actors and political office holders sponsor and manipulate this kind of thing. It's grossly not things people should be partaking in. And on this note, I would encourage the Nigerian youths who are at the forefront of this violence, because at the end of this whole thing, you don't see the elderly ones on the street protesting. You get to see only youths, young people with very bright future, killing themselves in the name of protesting. It's time that they stop. It's time that they ask questions, ask these people to come and lead the way.
That's fair enough. Still on the issue of these riots, do you think perhaps the banks are in a tough spot? If perhaps the problem or the issues are coming from the central bank, do you think they can speak about it without fear of, future sanctions and thereabouts? If a bank is not getting what it should be getting, and it says, you know what, the reason we are not getting your money is not because we don't want to give you, it's because the CBN has not given us.
Do you think can they outrightly say that?
That is the issue.
Now the question is, you cannot eat your cake and have it, and you cannot settle issues by technically avoiding them. Now, can the bank wholeheartedly, freely, on their own volition, say that the central bank have not given them money? So whose money are they holding in their safes? Whose money are they holding and sending to politicians?
Well, but the thing is, we're not seeing statements from them. At least they should have given their own side of the story. If they weren't complicit, if their hands were clean, they would have come up with. There is nothing. A bank is a company. The CBN is a regulatory body. Its body is just to make policies. Now, if you as a person is not offending the law, why would you not speak out? Now, you can see their property is being damaged. At the end of the day, it is only the insurance company that gets to bear the brunt. If your company your business is being damaged and it is by no effort of yours, of course you will speak out. But they've eaten their cake, and you cannot ask them to speak at the same time while they are complicit of the matter. Right, that's interesting. I'd just like to take us back a bit to the political aspect of things, or what's happening in terms of politics. I'm sure you've seen a number of endorsements and a number of surrendering of, not surrender is the wrong word there, perhaps collapsing of structures for other candidates. We saw the ADC, a portion of the ADC collapsing structure for Peter Obi, another ADC in Lagos collapsed for Atiku, another ADC, it's been happening thereabouts, and we've been seeing rebuttals and endorsements here and there. What do you make of this system? It's almost as though people expect it every election cycle, that people will go into the election, and when it's at the last end of the campaigns, they start giving up their seats for others. It's
a recurring decimal in every election cycle. Some political parties are not in the race, actually. Sorry to say that, to win the election. Some not because they do not qualify, but because they might not be economically equipped for the task ahead. Now you get to see that we have over 176,000 polling units. Most of these persons do not have persons who within certain geographical locations, so it is relevant that they merge their forces with those who have and those who have what they with people who have incomplete resources. They can merge their resources to be able to get at least a definite result. Now, you recall in 2015 we had the CPC, the ACN, the new PDP, the new APGA, They all merged. And the ANPP, as at then led by Ogbonyon, they all merged. So, merging and just like you said, giving out their political platform to other political parties which they feel have much more resources and whose ideology rhymes with theirs. It is expected in periods like this. One, because it helps to boost the electoral confidence of every political party and political candidate. If people who were your opponents before now becomes your supporter, it means you've been able to increase your number of followership, you've been able to increase your number of support, and it increases your chances at the pool. So you get to merge resources, merge information, and merge even ideas that are at each other's disposal. That way you'll be able to tackle the 176,000 polling units that are available.
All right. I don't know if there's any legal aspect to this, or is it simply just an expression?
There is no legal aspect.
Okay, but still.
But on the measure, on the proper measure, the proper measure should have come 9 months before an election.
Yes.
But this is not a proper measure.
Yes, this is just
each of them still retain their candidates.
Yes. That is the question now. When these things are made, who should be at the forefront of it? Take, for instance, the APM. The national chairman held a press conference and said that there was an annual general meeting. No, pardon me, not an annual general meeting, a NEC meeting. And after that, they decided to adopt Atiku Abubakar. And journalists there, the first question, the first elephant in the room was that while he was making this declaration, the presidential candidate of the party was not there. So when these things are done, is it all right, or is it normal for the chairman to say this is who I'm going with? The candidate
it is not normal at all. It is not normal, and it is something. If it is done to you, you should be able to take actions against your party. It's not. This is not part of.
But does it count for illegal action?
It counts for a legal action because one, you've entered into some kind of a contract with that party to sponsor you. You made some commitment. You've furnished considerations. It is for the party to sponsor you and sponsor you today, and not on the last part pull out of such. This does not form within the internal affairs of a political party. A political party who has given out forms, sold out their forms, and people made monetary commitment and purchased your form, submitted their names to INEC, and have not voluntarily withdrawn. The only basis upon which a candidate can come out of an election is voluntary withdrawal or death. That has been provided by our Electoral Act. So if these persons do not die and they have not voluntarily withdrawn, you have a condition to see them through to the poll, except they voluntarily withdraw. But wherein you, out of your own carelessness as a party executive, you jeopardizes his actions, he has every right to take you out a legal action against each of the members that have partook in such actions.
All right, let's look at the flip side of it. I'm sure you've seen in the news that former Enugu State Governor and current Senator Chimaroke Nnamani was expelled, or was I think that's the word, removed from the party, alongside some others, including Larry Olayinka in Ekiti State, and so on and so forth. Now, the issue is some of these persons are running for positions, including Senator Chimaroke, who is running for re-election in Enugu State as a senator. Going forward, what does this really mean for these candidates who their parties have removed them for anti-party activities and they've disowned them? Is their candidacy still intact? It
creates a legal room, a room for a legal issue. Now, this area of jurisprudence has not been tested quite all right, but it creates a room for a party, assuming he wins assuming without considering that he wins. The other party can seek that he be nullified and the second runner will be declared as a winner. One is that the constitution stipulates that a person must be sponsored by a political party to the end of the election. Now, if your political party withdraws their sponsorship, there is no independent individual candidacy at the moment. If a party withdraws, oh, we are not sponsoring you out of their executive neck, whatever, and they withdraws their support and give reasons for such withdrawal, and expels you out of the party, you are not being sponsored by any political party, and the election is still there. Assuming they withdraw, they expel him after he won the election, he might decide to go to another election, to go to another political party. But in this instance, he was expelled before an election. And the constitution stipulates that you must be sponsored by a political party throughout the process of the election. The election has not ended. So at the moment, he is not being sponsored by any political party. The other party can initiate an action that he be disqualified, and the entire political party, that political party should be disqualified from fielding candidate in that zone.
But what would you say to those candidates in question? You know, they've come out and tried to express confidence that they're not bothered about that. Is there an instance where they can challenge their expulsion, and that gives them, you know, the good go ahead?
Can they challenge their expulsion?
Is that something that's legal?
Can they challenge their expulsion? Now, expulsion and a membership of a political party is an exclusive reserve of that political party. It is not something you challenge in court. If the court, but what if they feel wronged? However, if by expelling you, they have gone contrary to any law or any of the party's constitution, you can challenge on the basis of that they have infringed on this law and the constitution of this political party. But if they have not so done, and you have been expelled, and they have taken every necessary action steps in confirming your expulsion, it is an internal affair of a political party, and the court of law, no court of law, have a right to examine it.
All right, you know, but okay. The issue was how to resolve that matter. Is this still an internal thing? If the party says it was a mistake, take for instance, what constitutes anti-party activities? If I happen to take a picture with the opposing party,
now each party have their constitution. They have things members should do and what members should not do. If the actions has been breached, and also those constitution provides guideline upon which to attend to such persons, either to call a panel for them and have them a panel of inquiries and have them face the panel. But each of the political parties have this peculiar way of dealing with these things, and it is enshrined in their constitution. So if those steps have not been taken by that political party, he has a right to challenge it in court. But if it has been taken and it has been seen to be taken and it was well taken, he has no cause of action.
All right, finally, I'd like to get your thoughts ahead of the elections. What's your advice to Nigerians 2 days, 3 days to that time, and what do you hope to see?
It's an important election in the history of Nigeria. We are, as you can see, we are not moving forward. We are stagnant as a nation. So I employ every Nigerian who is eligible to vote to go out on the day of the election, cast their vote, and protect their votes. Nobody should be used as a political thug. Nobody should be used as a means of causing terror and harm in this forthcoming election. Parents should warn their children. Children should adhere to the law. Even the parents also should adhere to the law. Everybody should work for us to achieve the Nigeria that we all dream. It's a good election, and it's an election that should give us the best candidate. I wish them all the best.
All right, thank you very much, Mr. Kelechi, for coming. It's always a pleasure to have you.
Thank you so much for having me.
All right. All right, that's all we'll take on the program for today. I'll leave you now with a recap of some updates so you get to know what's happening around the nation. Just keep a date with us every weekday, 2 p.m. to 3:30 p.m. On the weekdays, like I said, on the Polity, reaching you live from Abuja studios of Kaftan Television. Have a nice day. I'm Amadou Nobari. See you.